Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. We have a really cool webinar planned for you. We've got Tom and Steve here and Caitlin as well, although Tom and Steve are going to be doing the presentation. They're from Buyside and they are going to share with you guys some strategies that you can use to help Buyside grow your business. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom and Steve, and if you guys have any questions, they can answer the buy side questions, and I'm here for anything that's hunt specific to jump in and help out. So Tom, Steve, all you guys.
Right on. Thank you so much. And like she said, today we're going to be going over some digital marketing. And so just a quick agenda for some of these terms you may not have heard is we're going to talk about what retargeting is. So retargeting, well, you know what? I'll let Steve take care of that because I think I'm in your boat. I want to learn a lot of this stuff today. So this is really exciting. So we're going to talk a little bit about retargeting and what that actually means. How the automated follow-up sequences can happen and how easy it is to create something that you can touch all of those people, the folks that are in our sphere of influence with these different advertisements, and how simple it is to create this automatic version of that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about brand sale versus service sale. So when we're marketing ourselves, what are we marketing? Are we marketing ourselves? Are we marketing the service that we create? Is it going to be the brand? Is it going to be the brokerage? How often should we be doing that? So we'll be talking a little bit about that with our expert, Steve Peel, today. And we're also going to be talking about a little bit of the marketing that you can do with Buyside tools. There are a few of those marketing tools that we have inside Buyside. Now, you saw a few last week when we were talking about your marketing suite and how you can distribute this on social media and different other tools. So we'll take a look at that, but we'll also show you a few new ones, some things you may not have known that were in Buyside. Now, you do have everybody on mute. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the questions box that you see over on the right-hand side, and we can get to all of those once we get to the very end. All right, Steve, we're going to get started. So the first question is retargeting. So this is the idea when we're seeing that ad follow us, correct? That's one of those things. So really, what is retargeting?
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Tom. So retargeting, is effectively in its simplest form what you just stated. So the idea that when you see an ad, it begins to kind of follow you regardless of where you land online, right? So I'm sure anyone on this call has been shopping on Amazon, or was on CNN.com, or was on some sort of digital property, and then you realize, as you went to Facebook or you navigated away from that site, it seems like that specific item is kind of chasing you around, right? What that is, it's retargeting. What the strategy behind it is to drive frequency in the amount of times that you see an ad to drive action, right? They found their studies, and I'm sure we can send out some materials after this, that suggests that it does require up to 7 times seeing, a product or a service, or in our case, a home for sale, maybe, right? For somebody to actually take that first step of action. So typically we find that, people don't convert immediately. And by employing this particular strategy, you increase the likelihood that somebody's going to engage with you. The thing that's interesting about retargeting as well is oftentimes it's less expensive as far as cost per action. The reason is because you have a highly relevant piece of content. This person has already hit your site. They already, have expressed some degree of intent. Therefore, it requires less impressions or less, engagement or exposure to actually drive that action. So while we encourage, and obviously, that's something that I do here at Buyside as well. You focus on really that top of funnel, like initial touch point, and getting people to your site. But if they don't convert immediately, it's important that you get in front of them again, right? So retargeting is effectively the way to do that.
Okay, so I love that. And I have seen those where like you think about a product and all of a sudden it's appearing on your social media sites where maybe you've
Yep.
searched it once. Right? It's not that creepy where you think about it, but maybe you've searched it once. And the other day I was looking for new work boots, and every site that I went to after that was like, hey, do you want new work boots? I'm like, oh, this is great. So Quick question though is just maybe not too technical of an answer, but just at a high level, how does that work? How are they able to identify what you've searched and have it follow you?
Totally. So it's actually really pretty straightforward. So what it is in order to enable retargeting, you employ what's called a pixel. What it is it's a little script of code, little JavaScript that you drop into your site, and what it does is it plants a cookie on that individual's browser. So a cookie is effectively what allows you to store passwords or store logins or store your place where you were on a particular website, and by doing so you then get served those ads based on that cookie tracking you, right? So like if you've seen over the course of the past probably 2 or 3 years, there's a lot of focus on opt-in for allowing cookies. So like if you go to getbuyside.com, if you haven't accepted cookies, you'll see a banner that says we use cookies to track and XYZ. That's effectively what that is. It's an identifier, whether it's anonymous or a known contact, that allows you to target additional ad placements in front of that individual. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It sounds delicious and helpful. So, really quickly, what we were talking about using that and how we're able to put those onto these sites. What platforms can we use? So what services are we going to be able to do something like that on? And really what I'm asking is I don't understand how I can take a pixel or a cookie and put it on somebody's site. So what's an easy way to do that?
Totally. So I'll use an example. So Facebook marketing, right? So I'm sure that a lot of people on the call obviously use Facebook, right? Whether that's for just personal reasons, or also as a tool to find prospects or connect with past clients, all that good stuff, right? So say that you're going to implement a Facebook ad campaign and you want to use retargeting as the strategy. So what you would effectively do is when you go to generate an ad or you start to promote a post, there's actually one of the steps is they'll provide you with that little script, that little code snippet. At which point, if you go to your site, it's literally a copy and paste, and then Facebook is able to tie that that cookie to your ad account or to your Facebook account, so that you can use that you can use visitors as an audience for your targeting, right? Again, it's very, very low lift when it comes to actually implementing it. So if your site's built on WordPress or really any modern website platform, right? Typically it takes all of 2 minutes to deploy that, at which point you can build audiences to retarget.
I love it. That sounds easy enough that I can take that and just implement it on some of my sites, whether that be on social media or on my agent website. And I think, with all of us, I think we can agree that time is our most valuable resource. So I guess the next question is, why does this work? Why is this something I would want to spend my time on as a strategy?
So I think that's 2 questions, right? The reason why you would want to do it is it's kind of to my previous point, it's super low lift with an output that's significant, right? Because it's just a little piece of code. I mean, I encourage folks, even if they're not going to deploy retargeting campaigns right away, I would still drop the pixel on your site, because you begin to collect data, right? So even if you're not deploying a campaign and say 120 days later you decide to do it, you then have that audience of the past 120-day visitors that you can use to target. So the output of it is significant relative to the lift to actually implement. The second question is, why does this work as a strategy? And this goes back to my initial points as we introduced this topic. Frequency is the name of the game, right? We all have, well, I'll speak for myself. My attention span is that of a squirrel. You know, with this digital age, you know, we are constantly inundated with distractions, information. You know, we're busy professionals, and we're, you know, constantly bouncing around. And, you know, as much as we try to be intentional, you know, we forget, or we get distracted. And, you know, even if I did go to Amazon and I really intended on purchasing, you know, let's call it new headphones, you know, I got distracted. But by reintroducing that product, it reminds us that, oh, there's that thing that I wanted to take an action on, right? And that drives buying behavior and engagement behavior. And additionally, you know, it's relative to reaching net new. And by net new, I mean, you know, you're bringing brand new people to your storefront, which is, you know, your website, right, or your experience. Relative to that, the cost is significantly lower, because you're very, very targeted, and you're only looking at folks that have already engaged with product, service, or brand, or whatever it is that you're promoting, right? So yeah, that would be my answer to those two questions there.
Gotcha. And that, of course, perfectly describes real estate. So if somebody is thinking about buying or selling, or thinking about contacting an agent, or just if they have real estate questions, well, who are they going to contact? It's probably the person they've seen these ads for. So I think, kind of piggybacking on that last point there, what are a few different ways? So this question is, what are 3 ways that we can implement this to get the most out of our marketing campaigns? What's going to be the simplest way?
That's good. So the first one is, you know, there's, you know, I keep harping on this. Frequency is the key here. And so the easiest way is start with, you know, promoting, you know, your name and your likeness, right? So if somebody hits your site, retarget them with an ad placement that talks about, you know, what you do, who you are, and why somebody should work with you. To your point that you just made there, you know, the home buying or selling process is a process, right? A lot of times, you know, it takes, you know, 6, 9, 12 months for folks to, from the idea of buying or selling to actually executing on it, right? And so you just want to be in front of them as much as humanly possible. So when they decide to make that decision, you know, you're the first person that they think of, right? The second one, or the second way that, or thing that you can do when implementing these to make the most out of your campaigns is, because you have a tracking pixel and you're retargeting, you can also do some really interesting work with audience development. And what I mean by that is, most ad platforms, especially Facebook, you can develop what are called lookalike audiences. So what it does is it, you know, we'll say this, you know, if you're targeting, you know, folks that have visited your site over the past 60 days, you know that those folks are individuals that are interested on some level of, or in your service, or you know, are kicking tires around buying or selling a home, right? With lookalike audiences, what Facebook will do is it'll serve up people that have similar attributes to the people that visited your site over the course of that 60 days. So on top of being able to really frequently be in front of people, you can also expand your audience and find people that are also likely to be looking to buy or sell a home. And then the third thing that you can do, and this is probably the most involved, but it's still relatively low lift, right? Is I would encourage you to do programmatic and kind of like accelerated campaigns. And what I mean by that is, you know, introduce some variance, right? So like the first ad that somebody sees, you know, maybe it's your likeness, right? It's you know, John Realtor, you know, sells homes in Cincinnati for, or faster than, you know, XYZ. That's terrible copy, so please don't quote me on that. But and then maybe the second ad talks about, you know, what the market conditions are, right? And then maybe the third ad drives into a capture form. But the point is, you know, you don't want to necessarily introduce the same exact carbon copy of an ad placement every single time that somebody sees it, right? So think about kind of like the life cycle and kind of the journey and education that can happen and the stages in which you can back into in your retargeting efforts.
I love it. I do have one follow-up question for that, and that is, it sounds like we've been talking about a few different services that we can use for this advertisement, for retargeting and all that. So what is, and I think I've asked you this before, what is the, are there any repercussions for switching services? So if I'm using a retargeting, let's say I'm using Facebook and I decide to switch to something else, are there any drawbacks to switching services?
No. Short answer is no.
That's easy.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if I could expand on that, and this is kind of a philosophy that I encourage all to think about, is like experimentation is the name of the game here, right? Like there are so many different variables that exist in digital marketing that it is constantly, I say that, like, I'm a mad scientist, not a marketer, right? Because I'm constantly testing things and figuring out, on Thursday, Facebook may be the best platform, right? But on Friday, maybe Google retargeting is better, right? So definitely, test and figure out where where you can find success. But there's no drawback at all to switching, here and there. Now I will say, I would not, pivot every day, and I would not, spread your budget so thin that you don't really have meaningful results on anything. But there's truly no reason that you can't test and experiment with various platforms.
I love it. So you just talked about getting that meaningful results. And I think we can all have all of us have seen at one point an advertisement that shows up every 45 seconds, right? I know there's one on a vitamin supplement that comes up on my Facebook every time I open it. And I just think to myself, I didn't get it, and I'm not going to, but I see this ad so often and it's so recognizable. So I think the last question is, how often should we be posting this, or how often should we have these advertisements or retargeting go out? So we want to get the full value of that, right? It's sort of like in real estate, we want to get the full value of the house, but we don't want it to be sit on the MLS forever. So how often should we be doing this?
So I would say, like, at some level, I would encourage folks to, obviously, within your means, to have something running always, because the platforms themselves are going to kind of regulate frequency. So for Facebook, for example, frequency is actually a measure that they have implemented, and there's like a scale of 1 to 10 that gives you a rating of, is your audience seeing this too much, too little, or just enough, right? And these platforms are programmatic in how they deliver ad placements. So the short answer is, I would encourage folks to always have some variant of an ad running, because it's not money spent poorly or in a bad way, because that money's going towards an audience that you really care about, right? So even if they don't take direct action, like, it's still super valuable. And then the platforms themselves will kind of regulate that, right? So yeah.
I love it. Okay, so that's retargeting, and what we're talking about is the ad placement, especially if somebody is interested in buying or selling. If they've expressed that interest, we want to make sure that we can help capitalize on that. And that's the idea behind retargeting, is that if somebody does visit your agent website or visits maybe your home valuation site, we want to make sure that we're providing them with the resources to contact them or answer any questions that they have. So that's the idea behind this. And, again, if you have any questions from some of the things you've heard today, please let us know, and we'd be happy to answer those at the end. So the next part of this is the follow-up, right? So we've hit them with the target, the ads. So we're going to be talking about the automated follow-up sequence. So the first, Steve, the first part of the automated follow-up sequence is the cadence. How often should we be doing this, or what is the cadence in these follow-up sequences?
Totally. So you should see my mind turning. So there's a few schools of thought here, but the most straightforward one is, I encourage folks, like, if it's new contacts that you're just educating and you're not really sure, if they're qualified or they're ready to buy yet, I would say at minimum once a month, right? I think that there's opportunity to accelerate that as you see signals signals being like they're engaging and looking at their home value, right? You know, they submitted their address on your HVS, right? That's when I would accelerate it, and then maybe it's, you know, once every 2 weeks. But the important thing here, regardless of whether it's 1 week or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it is that there's consistency behind it, because kind of related to frequency is, you know, there's a subconscious expectation, right, where folks begin to recognize and understand or expect rather some sort of communication from you in some way, right? So yeah, I would say minimum once a month, absolutely. Whether that's market reports, whether that's you know, your newsletter, whatever it is. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good cadence to start with.
You know, I do think we skipped over one point, and that is, what is an automated follow-up sequence? I think I may not have explained that terribly well. So could you just run us through really quick what is an automated follow-up sequence as we go through these?
Yeah, totally. So automated follow-up sequences, as it relates to this, would be, you know, so when somebody submits a form, the worst thing that we could do is forget about them, right, and not reach out. And so there's you know, a school of thought, or not a school of thought. It's industry standard to automate what that outreach looks like through automation tools, right? So whether you're using MailChimp or, you know, we use HubSpot at Buyside, there's ways that you can basically stand up a series of communications and automate them so that, you know what, you're not required to pick up the phone or write an email to every form submission, right? You know that you have a program running, so you're not, you know, when somebody comes into your funnel or submits a form or what have you, you know that they're being taken care of and they're being nurtured, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about the cadence of those follow-up sequences, but what is the type of content that we should be sending out?
Lots of things, right? So for this use case, I'd say, especially for folks that are, you know, still kicking tires or getting an understanding of the market or trying to figure out the value of their home, I'd say if you err on the side of giving versus getting, you'll be okay. What I mean by that is, like, obviously there's extreme expertise in the work that you do, right? There's value in your understanding of the market, the process, you know, what have you. So educate your individuals as they enter your funnel, right? Educate them with, like I said, market conditions, right? Develop a newsletter, put together kind of like a bullet list of the top 3 things that you excel at, right? The goal is just to provide them with some degree of value, so that when they think to actually take the first step, like, obviously you're the first person that comes to mind because you've already proven yourself, 1, and 2, given them, you know, resources and value in the content that you've delivered.
I love it. Perfect. So what are the kinds of channels that we would want to deliver that content on? There's a lot of different types of content, like you just said, that we can send out. So what are the channels that we should send that and keep in touch with those folks?
I mean, so I would say, and just to keep it super straightforward, is like email, right? Obviously, you know, you can use all sorts of platforms, whether that's text, email, phone call. I mean, it's all follow-up, right? It's all action after, you know, somebody's performed some other action, right? But I'd say the easiest to deploy in a programmatic way is email, right? So yeah, I would encourage you to start there. You know, you can develop more complex strategies, right? Where, you know, we'll send 2 emails over the course of 2 weeks, and then after that they get a text, and then, you know, all that good stuff. But start at email and then, you know, develop from there, really.
Gotcha. Okay. And on that note, the email note, so I think we've all seen emails that look like this, but how often or when should we send a generic message versus a personalized message? So whether that be something that we type out directly to a person that's like, hey, Bill and Sally, I hope your kids, Timmy and whoever are doing really well, that personalized message versus the generic version of that message that's the one that goes out to everybody. So when should we say something like this, and is it appropriate?
Yeah, so the good news is you don't really have to choose, right? Because a lot of these tools, especially with data and all that good stuff, you can introduce personalization in a programmatic way. What I mean by that is, if you know that Betty Buyer is in Cincinnati, Ohio, and her home value is $250,000, and I'm thinking of other attributes, but let's stick with that. You can programmatically generate what feels like personalized content. So it reads, "Hey Betty, notice that you're looking to sell your home at 6,000 Pete Rose Way. Market's looking good for you, XYZ." And you can do that in an automated fashion, right? So I know that that's like a non-answer, but there are tools that allow you to kind of implement both strategies there. But then again, I would err on the side of like, the more that you can personalize the communications, whether that's the content of the communications or delivery, like bias yourself towards that. That's what drives conversions. That's what drives the relationships that are important. And if you can't do it at scale and it's warranted, write a personal email.
Gotcha. Yeah, it doesn't sound like that's a non-answer at all. I mean, it definitely depends on the type of person, whether you know them or not, and if it's one of those trying to get responses from a larger audience versus somebody that's actually reached out to you. So, giving them that personalized response, especially once they've reached out, I think is important. So having the ability to do both, I think, is huge. And just knowing that, whether you're talking to an audience or a specific person is when we would use one of those two types of follow-up sequences. And I'm actually so bummed here. I have my last slide and the pictures didn't save. I had a really cool latte with, the little flower on it, and then a Pepsi bottle. And that was the idea is that you're marketing two things, right? You're marketing your brand and you're marketing your service. So can you describe what the difference is between those two things?
Yeah, totally. So I'll start with brand, right? The brand is what you align to. That's the umbrella under which you operate, right? The importance in brand is recognition, validation, and trust, right? It proves that you're in it, right? "Quote unquote in it." And then the service side, I kind of relate to like, that's the you. Like, you are the service in a way, right? What's important here is that there's a healthy balance between both, because both influence a buyer or seller's decision to list or purchase with you, right? So yeah, that's really the difference.
Okay, so let's talk about when we would want to use brand sales. So when we're marketing, when is it appropriate to use brand sale? And is this necessarily just advertising us as an agent of the broker, or is there more to your specific brand as an agent? There's like three questions in there if you want to unpack that a little.
I'm trying to unpack that a little bit. So I think I understand the essence of the question, but clarify if I missed the point here. So the brand is obviously something that you align to, right? Like, I align to Buyside, right, as a brand, but also I have a personal brand for sure, and that's my own flavor of how I operate, right? I think both are important, but when it comes to nurturing and if we go back to the original intent, right, behind our marketing, it's to acquire business, right? And so what's important on the front end is, if I don't know John, I probably know the brokerage that he's aligned towards. So at first, I'm probably going to promote the brand that I operate under, right? Not the personal brand, but the brand, right? The brokerage. Yeah, does that answer your question?
It does, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the obvious next question is when would we use service? So when is
Yeah.
it that we would advertise service versus that brand? So yeah, getting the definition of both of those and how it's working. So yeah, that's a good explanation of brand because it isn't just the brokerage. Your brand as an agent is important as well. So making sure that we're
Mm.
able to have that come across. But when would we use service as a sale for a marketing strategy?
Totally. So I'd say I typically introduce kind of like I think of service again as that's the you, right? That's the who you are, the why you are the way you are, and the how you execute, right? And how you serve your clients. I'd say that that's typically later stage, right? Later stage meaning, you know, they've interacted with you a bit. They've seen your brand promotions, and you know that, you know, this is perfect for retargeting because you already know that they've hit your site or something. But it's typically later on in the decision process, right? You know, they've moved beyond like curious intent. They've aligned and understand your brand both personally and from a company level, and now it's time to sell yourself, right, or your service. So yeah.
Love it. Perfect. So the last question I have about this is there a way to automate both of those? So a brand sale marketing strategy and a service sale marketing strategy so that I can have these set up, I can be working on transactions, but I'm still getting the marketing, you know, the people coming in and questions. So is there a way to automate both of these so that I don't have to spend a ton of time doing it?
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of all of this. And I think that that's a perfect way to tie all of these strategies together, is because one of the things that I think is challenging at times is to wrap our heads around or understand the amount of lift required to implement these things, right? Like I could spend hours talking about, you know, everything that we've covered today. But in reality, like a lot of these tools, all of these tools and strategies can be automated and kind of, and it's not set it and forget it, but, and it requires a little bit of lift up front, but you can most certainly automate all of these strategies, right? It just requires, you know, sitting down and doing it. And what you'll find is like, as you know, these three strategies, for example, as you deploy those, you'll see that they kind of serve and influence each other, right? So if I have, you know, more programmatic like retargeting campaigns, and I have a healthy automated, you know, email sequence, the likelihood of those folks converting is significantly higher compared to if I were to just implement, you know, one of those. So yeah, I would say, you know, all of them can be automated. I encourage, at the very least, that you automate one of these kind of pillars. But you'll find that if you set up the engine on all categories, you will reap rewards.
I
That
love
was
it. Perfect. And that was a great way to tie off the this portion of the webinar. So we do have something where I want to show you inside of Buyside really quickly a couple of the tools that we can use to implement some of the things that we just talked about. So one is you do have your marketing suite. So just as we talked about last week in that webinar of how you can use your home valuation site and how we can send this out on social media and use those different strategies that we just learned, you can send this out. So the first is we'll talk about how you can share this portion of it, your home valuation site, on social media. Now, I know this might be a bit of a review here, but this is the way you would do it. So you just hover over that icon and you're able to share this out. So once we have that out there, we can use those services to promote these advertisements as well. So if we post this on Facebook, there's obviously Boost and a few different other things like Steve had talked about with retargeting. So here's how we could do a great way to get new leads in that marketing is by sharing your home valuation site out on social media. So we can do that in a number of different ways. So one, we can do it on our news feed, our story, a group or your Facebook business page. So that's a good way of getting this out in front of people, getting that attention. And even when somebody replies to this, when we get those in as leads, having that follow-up, being able to send that out. And like he said, one of the worst things we can do is have somebody fill out this form, which there is, and then not respond to them. So we have those great notifications where if you get a new lead in here, it is going to notify you that that came in, so we can respond to those right away and start to generate that new business. Now, there's one other thing that I will show you, because we did the webinar on the marketing suite already. So if we go back to our dashboard, and let's say we've got our buyer here. So I can actually share my buyers out on social media as well. So you can come in here, we can see I've got my buyer here, and I've got the stars in here as well. So I can see how strong this buyer is. But not only that, there's an entire buyer profile here. So it's what is the price range? What is the area? So what I can do is send this out. You'll see this icon in a bunch of different places. This is how we share that. So I can send this out on social media, on Facebook and Twitter and all that. So just to show you what that looks like, it says public profile in the top right-hand corner. So if you want to see what your buyer would look like out on social, this is what it shows you. So it doesn't show the person's name. Of course, we're not sharing your contact information with anybody. That stays sacred to you. So we can see the buyer ID, but you see the strength of that buyer, where they're looking, the price range. So it gives you that snapshot up on top, the locations of interest. And just in case you were wondering what Steve was talking about with those cookies, if you've seen this message on the bottom, yes, website source cookies, that's what it means. It's talking about retargeting. So we'll be able to use that. So I'm going to accept so that our website can start to use that. So that's what that message looks like. But we can see our areas of interest here, and we have the full details, but you'll notice a lot of this is blurred out. We do that on purpose. So if somebody is interested in selling their listing and they see the buyer that's looking to buy their listing, they're of course going to contact the agent, right? So you might get a new lead, a new seller lead based off of one of the buyers that you've posted. So you're able to contact and reach out to those folks. So if they are considering buying, they'll probably reach out to the person that has buyers. In the same way that if somebody's considering buying, well, who are they going to talk to? Probably somebody that represents buyers. So we give them that call to action to contact Joe, or you can see contact Joe for full profile. For the record, I am Joe. So we can put that in here. It does have this form, and it's just a couple minutes to fill this out. Again, this is that same one that's on our home valuation site, where I can put in my name, my email address, that I'm a seller, and then away it goes, and I can then contact this person right away. So we've got a few different avenues for how to market ourselves using that marketing suite. And then really quickly, just to go back, we can look at the leads as they come in. So when we're talking to somebody, when we're working with a new person, whether we're just sending this out as marketing or those follow-ups, we can send that out. And a nice way to follow up here is you do notice that there are some people that will come in and have contact information, but there isn't everybody, right? This is about 25% of people are going to leave their contact information here. So sending this out is really easy. It just takes a couple minutes and you're going to get a lot of people back into this lead section. But a lot of them might say no name provided. Now you will see that it does have the owner's name. So there is a way for us to follow up with this. Those follow-up sequences we mentioned is, if I recognize this name, odds are they got to this page either from my social media page or from an email that I sent out, some communication. So I'm probably going to know the people that own these homes, especially if they got to my home valuation page through some of my networks. So I'm hopefully will recognize these names, so I can obviously call them. But if I don't, I still have those addresses here. So I can always download this as Avery label. So you'll see that right there in the middle, so that I can send mailers and follow up that way, so that we can use all of the different channels that we have at our disposal, whether it be mailers, whether it be calling, whether it be emailing, and all of the automated versions of this. So sending it out or in an email blast or using a newsletter. So all of those different tools wrap up into the Buyside suite that we can use here and show you those new leads and sign those new clients. Whew, okay, so that is our webinar today. So if you have any questions about what we talked about, whether it be the strategy itself or some of the tools you have inside Buyside, we're going to get started with our Q&A now. So if you have any questions, go ahead and let us know. I think that's going to be me. Okay, so Steve, I've got one question for you. So we mentioned a few of the different services that you can use for digital marketing and retargeting. Are there easy ones to start with? Is there one that you would recommend as a beginner for some of these services?
Yeah, so I'd say for our industry, believe it or not, Facebook, without a doubt. A lot of their targeting is really, really robust. They have, I don't know how they do it, but they've, well, I mean, data at scale. They're able to uncover like really like signals before anybody's expressed direct interest in a specific thing, right? Like when my daughter, well, before she was born, when we found out that we were having her, it's almost like Facebook knew that I was gonna have a child, right? Which I know that's a terrible example, but the point is, there's a lot of really, really specific intent and signal driven data that you can use from Facebook, because they have a wealth of knowledge, and there's things on top of that that you can do, as far as like brand affinity, or you can specify specific geos and things of that nature, and it's really, really straightforward and easy to deploy. I'm sure that 99.99% of us on this call all have a pretty robust social media presence of some sort. And if you're already on that platform, might as well use it, right? And I'd say it's actually a little bit easier, more kind of user friendly than Google AdWords or things like that. And also, related to Facebook would be Instagram, right? Those are the two platforms that I would say.
Gotcha. I love it. Okay, so the next question is, do we enter the buyer ratings info, or is that information pulled from our database? Okay, so let's really quick go back here. So I think what you're talking about is the buyer rating that you see here, these 4 stars. Now, these actually, the individual stars mean something. So you don't populate this at all. So when you're putting in your buyer profile, you're going to enter things like, do they have a purchase by date? Or are they ready to buy? Are they pre-qualified? So do they have a lender? Is it a cash buyer? So all of that is going to go into your buyer profile. And of course, are they represented by an agent? So that's what the stars represent. That's what those ratings are. So that when you're looking through buyers, you're able to see how strong that buyer is. But this populates automatically. So if you go in and fill out your buyer profile, all of these tell us that it's a strong buyer, but all of them are typically things that a serious buyer would already have checked. So you don't have to populate that. It's going to do it on its own, just by virtue that you put all of this information in here. Very good. Okay, I don't see any more questions. So thank you everybody for being here. This was a great webinar. This was the 3rd one, and we of course did record it. So if you do want to go back and hear any of the points that we talked about, we'll send over the recording so that you can have all 3 of the webinars discussing what Buyside is and how we can help utilize the digital marketing in our everyday business. So thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.